All of your notes. Okay, it's fine.
I don't even know.
What?
About
What's up?
It's finally working.
Welcome to the Holistic Kid Show. My name is Zane.
My name is Abdullah.
And I'm Zimad.
We're the Holistic Kids, here to educate us kids from the inside out. With this new year, it comes with new health, new goals, new commitments, and most of all, looking to help us recharge and energize, becoming our very best self.
But with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention released new data on last month that found that about 3.3 million adults in the U.S. suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome.
And kids are no different. There are a lot of tired kids. But where are we going to start to get energized and recharge our body for the best year yet?
We have the best person here with us today to help us supercharge ourselves and become the very best versions of ourselves.
Dr. Molly Maloof, best-selling author of The Spark Factor, provides health optimism and personalized medicine to high-achieving entrepreneurs, investors, and technology executives. For 3 years, she taught a pioneering course on healthspan in the wellness department of the medical school at Stanford University, before launching her own company inspired by her unique philosophy of health. Since 2012, she has worked as an advisor and consultant for more than 50 companies in the digital health.
Wow. So thank you so much for joining us today.
How did you go from being a conventional trained doctor to becoming a super biohacker? And what is a biohacker?
Sure, great question. Well, I'm sure you guys have noticed that most modern medicine is focused on drugs and surgery. And I was really interested in being able to offer more to my clients than the traditional path. So I had a bright idea as a new young doctor to build a practice around optimizing health instead of just fixing sickness. I was also doing personalized medical research for executives, and I was learning that a lot of these executives I was working for in the Silicon Valley space were really interested in technology and in tracking their health metrics. They were coming to me with spreadsheets. They were curious what it all meant. And so I became obsessed with the idea of measuring and optimizing health instead of just diagnosing and treating illness. I wanted to understand health before it became disease. I wanted to understand this concept of P4 medicine, which is personalized, preventive, predictive, and participatory. This was a term coined by Leroy Hood, who became one of my mentors briefly as I was investigating his work around, measuring health. So I ended up getting some amazing mentors, and there's this great quote that I learned: if she can see it, she can be it. So I met some amazing doctors in Silicon Valley who were working with executives and optimizing health, and I said, "Wait, what do you mean you optimize health? Like, what does that mean?" And they're like, well, we order lots of labs, and we basically are, changing a person's diet, their sleep regimen, their exercise regimen, their stress management, their circadian rhythm management, their supplements, and we're optimizing their system so they can be as healthy as possible. And I was like, wait, that's a job? I want to do that. So I started basically telling them, you got to tell me what your secrets, like, what do I need to do to, become this kind of doctor? And this guy bought me the textbook of functional medicine, and he's like, look, teach yourself. So I became an autodidact. I really basically dug into trying to figure out how to measure health. And it led me down this rabbit hole of blood sugar monitoring very early in my career. And I did not realize that I had blood sugar dysregulation issues. And I was like, whoa, like here I am thinking I'm this super healthy young doctor, and I actually need to work on my health. This was around the same time as the founding of companies like Oura Ring or Fitbit. And so I was in this really cool time and place in Silicon Valley where monitoring technologies were booming and becoming big business. And so I got to be a part of consulting and working for tons of companies in digital health, wearable tech, food tech, supplements. And in the process, built my brand, drmolly.co. And when I was writing my book, they were like, how are we going to market your book? And I was like, well, I guess you could call what I'm doing biohacking, because it's basically going around this system to use the same technologies and tools that you use in medicine, like laboratory testing and blood sugar monitoring, and, using that information to improve health rather than just diagnose disease.
So what is a biohacker, like, exactly? I mean, it sounds pretty cool to be a biohacker, but what do you have to do?
Well, so for example, a lot of people are like, I think I eat a healthy diet, but they have no idea what their diet is doing into their like inside their body. So I'm measuring all sorts of different things like vitamin D levels, magnesium levels, micronutrient levels, iron levels, omega-3 acids, omega-6 acids, cholesterol levels, particle numbers, and the list goes on. I can measure urine organic acids to look at protein intake. I can measure mitochondrial function through the Krebs cycle, through the Nutrival test by Genova. I can measure gut health and look at how healthy a person's gut is. I can measure immune system markers to find out if someone has immune system dysregulation. And I can measure hormones to see if, a person's fitness regimen is actually improving the hormones or degrading the hormones. So you can see a lot about a person through their labs. And it's, I have a lot of friends that are doctors and they're very focused on chronic illness. I'm very, very focused on health optimization. And I do work with patients with chronic illness, but a lot of my clients are fairly healthy and they just want to stay healthy and they want to predict and prevent disease before it happens. And metabolic disease is basically the biggest driver of disease in the country. And it's from eating the wrong diet. It's from eating insufficient fruits and vegetables. It's from exercising too little. It's from having too much stress, most of which comes from psychosocial stress. And so my job is to take a holistic perspective on optimizing health and really get to know a client from the inside out. And I have 60 pages of questions I ask a new client because I want to learn about them. I want to get to know them. And eventually I'll build like an AI system that will do everything that my brain does. But for now, it's, still an analog manual system that I've created for myself in my practice.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, with chronic disease and fatigue on the rise, you mentioned in your book that this is the result of mitochondrial dysfunction, meaning the mitochondria is not working the way it is.
Yeah.
So it should. So let's dive into the mitochondria. What is it, and what does it do to our body?
Sure. So I'm sure you've heard of mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell. Everybody learns that in school.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually learning that in school right now.
I mean, everyone learns it, right? But it's so much more than the powerhouse of the cell. I thought it was like, just like a little engine that's metabolizing fuel, turning it into heat and energy. It does a lot more than that. It's actually sensing and integrating the environment. They're like little quantum computers in every single cell. And they're literally trying to take the signals from your sensory, experiences and basically integrate it all into action. And so every single cell in every mitochondria are constantly surveying the signals that they're getting and asking, am I safe or am I unsafe? Am I in peacetime metabolism or my wartime metabolism? And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, if you feel chronically stressed and completely overwhelmed, your metabolism will change. And Martine Picard and a few other mitochondrial researchers have kind of dug into this concept called the cell danger response. And what we're learning is that the nervous system is, when it gets dysregulated, when it gets basically when a person experiences chronic threat through either trauma or chronic, negative interactions in their family life or their work life, it can literally change your nervous system. And it can create the conditions where you sense the world is unsafe. And so your nervous system is kind of on guard. And that actually has downstream effects because it'll affect where the energy is going. Is it going to go to protecting yourself, activating your immune system, potentially overactivating your immune system? Is it going to go to producing sex hormones? Well, probably not, because your body doesn't want to reproduce if it feels unsafe. Mm-hmm. So you basically, like, energy production is one thing that they do, but also directing the energy use is another thing that they do through determining, am I going to be creating more sex hormones or more stress hormones? So they actually play a role in the production of stress hormones and sex hormones, which is interesting. And they also are very important for regulating the immune response. So it's really a big question of chicken and the egg. Like, does inflammation cause mitochondrial dysfunction, or does mitochondrial dysfunction create inflammation? It's probably both. But fundamentally, if your immune system is not working properly, there's probably a metabolic element to it. And so, Christopher Palmer wrote a great book called Brain Energy, and you guys should totally interview him. And his book is like my book, and it's all about how mental illness is linked to mitochondrial dysfunction. So what they're thinking now is that mental illness is like an energy dysregulation problem. So typically what you see in mental illnesses is chaos or rigidity. And if you think about a person who's like rigid and catatonically depressed, they're not moving their body a lot. Somebody who's depressed and in bed all day long is not moving their body a lot. In a lot of ways, that is a biological response to chronic threat to create an energy reserve system, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, things like bipolar disorder or even seizure disorders are known to have energy imbalances and problems with energy regulation. So I think we're starting to really find a new ontology of illness and wellness through understanding metabolic disease. And to me, this is like the most exciting frontier of medicine because it explains why we are so sick in a modern life, in our modern lives, and why I think we can prevent it and get better. But it's a very complicated area to be studying, and I think it's going to open up an entire new perspective on how to treat illness and how to prevent illness.
Wow, that's so amazing how the mitochondria, it's such a small thing, can actually have a really big impact. I mean, like you were saying
that's really cool.
It's affected, like if someone has some trauma or anything, like their mitochondria can be really affected and we won't even know it, right?
Yeah.
And that can start to confuse the mitochondria to just making so the body stops working well.
Exactly. So anyway, love to hear more questions you guys have.
So let's talk a little bit more about stress.
Sure.
Because more than 2/3 of children report at least one traumatic event by age 16. So our bodies are dealing with chronic stress. Like stress is everywhere on the news, on social media, it's everywhere.
Yeah. So I like to look at stress both. I don't really look at it as like a positive or a negative thing anymore. It's more like we're humans. We're on a rock hurling through space. It's a little stressful, right? We're literally like, and the thing is we're actually under less stress than we were in the past, where we had to worry about staying warm in the winter and having energy. Like we live in a really special time to be alive. And that doesn't mean that we don't know more than ever about the effect of trauma and stress on the physiology in the body. And I look at it as an advantage, right? So somebody can experience a traumatic event and it can be what's known as an adverse childhood experience, which I'm sure you guys have heard about ACEs. And doctors are now giving people these ACE scores to identify like how much stress did you experience as a child, because it greatly increases your chance of developing chronic diseases and mental illness and addiction as an adult. So it's really important that we understand these, underlying factors that can contribute to disease. But just because you have trauma doesn't mean that's your destiny to get sick. Turns out that there's resilience factors. So just having one caring adult in your life as a child can actually mitigate the effects of the trauma. It can actually prevent it from converting into illness or disease. So human connection is actually one of my main focuses now of my career, because I felt like, oh my gosh, we have been overlooking this like really important facet of human existence, because our biggest sources of stress are from social injury. They're from the way that kids get bullied in school. They're from abuse or neglect. They're from, like lots of things that happen in our social relationships. So I felt like we were really missing something from medicine by ignoring this fact of health. Like it's really kind of like relegated to psychology, but the body keeps the score and the body has a lot of memory. And so the real question nowadays is, what do you do if you've had trauma? And what do you do if you have chronic stress? How do you get into a place of safety, and how do you get into a place of stability? And the truth is, it's honestly, the problem is, the solution is often the opposite of the problem. If you had traumatic relationships, you need healthy relationships, right? But the problem is that a person who's had traumatic relationships as a child is primed to feel that humans and others might be dangerous. The craziest thing too is that as you grow into an adult, if you've experienced traumatic experiences from your parents, which is unfortunate for a lot of children, you tend to be attracted to other adults that bring you memories that remind you of your parent, which is really screwed up, right? Like, I don't know what happened in human evolution that made you attracted to the things that are bad for you, but it's pretty weird, right? Like,
it is really weird.
Yeah,
it is super weird, but it's really cool to understand this stuff, because you can actually see in adult behavior they're just playing out their childhood traumas, right? So this is like a really interesting facet of human relationships. So the more awareness we bring to this topic of human connection and human relationships, the more we can actually create nurturing environments, and we can actually heal from painful experiences in the past. And it's, it's not just about what happens to you as a person, it's also what happens to your siblings. Like having a sibling with a traumatic experience can affect the entire family. So it's really a frontier of medicine to me right now, is like understanding the effects of human relationships and human connection on health and disease. And, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve our response to stress, right? Like just building a social network of strong friendships. Turns out that like anybody can learn to make friends, but social media and too much phone use and the pandemic really did a disservice to a lot of young people. And so like you guys, I obviously you've got 4. The cool thing about you guys is you have 4 siblings that are your friends, right?
Yeah.
I have 4 sisters, and like huge advantage over other kids because you get socialized by your siblings, right? Like your siblings are like teaching you how to be in the world. And if you didn't have a bunch of siblings, not that you didn't have the same benefits, but I think it's a major advantage.
Yeah.
Now, I've always been a social creature, but making friends is something that I've learned how to do really effectively as an adult. And it's just a prioritization thing. It's like, if you really want to have a bunch of friends, you have to be a social person, which means you have to interact with people, and you have to like typically, figure out how can you add value to other people's lives. It's always about what can I do for the other person? How can I make their life better? How can I give more? And like, it's a lot of people go out in the world when they socialize and they're all about what can they do for me, and that's not the way to make friends and influence people. So, basically what I learned in my youth was like, the more I helped others, the more people wanted to be my friend. And so it's really just that simple. It's like you go out and you just try to help people. And honestly, you just get really brave and realize that like everybody's socially awkward. So you don't have to be socially awkward because everyone's awkward. And so when I basically gave up social awkwardness, I was like, I could be as weird as I want and nobody knows. Nobody cares. So I just think that like embracing your weirdness and embracing your uniqueness and like not caring what people think is way easier said than done. But it does create a much easier path to making friends, and your social network is your net worth. And so it's a big facet in your health. Like I look at maintaining a social community as just as important as exercising and sleeping properly and taking my supplements and eating a good diet.
Yeah.
It's like the number one thing you can do to reduce your stress is having people that care about you around you. And if you don't have friends and family around you that care about you, loneliness is worse for your health than smoking, drinking, sedentary behavior, and obesity. So like knowing that, you should probably be optimizing your relationships, right?
Yeah, you definitely need to be optimizing your relationships.
Yeah.
It's really important. And so I basically pivoted my entire career to understanding human health and human connection through basically trying to figure out what is human love and why is love important for longevity. And I met this woman, Sue Carter, and she taught me all about oxytocin neurobiology. And I'm sure you guys have heard about like the cuddle hormone, or it's like this hormone. It's basically a neuropeptide. And when you are around people that you love and trust, and you have touch, like physical touch, like if you're cuddling your sibling or you're watching a movie and you're cuddling on the ground, you're actually producing a hormone in the body that is protective for your mitochondria. It's protective to your heart. It reduces inflammation. It reduces oxidative stress, and it basically heals you. And so it's like one of the most healing things you can do is have close, tender, loving, close personal relationships. And I didn't understand that this was so profound for physiology until I started studying it with these experts. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we are literally programmed to love, and we need love to survive. And without it, we don't thrive.
That's why love is so important. That's why our wheeling, we have like social health really affects your body in more ways than you can imagine.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like if you have bad friends compared to good friends, you're gonna be a lot more healthy if you have good friends.
Yeah, you gotta, I mean, I hate to say it, but you really gotta edit your social network. Because if people are consistently creating a sense of dis-ease, that can create disease, that can create dis-ease. And so it's really important that you like notice how you feel around people.
So a lot of kids now, because of pandemic and everything, everyone is kind of stuck on social media, right? And
Yeah, everyone's
and
obsessed.
social media is what is really detrimental for kids' health.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people now they're addicted. So how can you kind of biohack, like reverse biohack that, so kids
Sure.
can actually start socializing and get off of these addictions?
Well, I mean, any kid who's listening to this today who's competitive needs to understand that you will have a massive social advantage over your peers
Mhm.
if you have good social skills.
Yeah.
So if you want to be competitive in this really competitive world, being able to socialize with adults and other peers in a way where you can be articulate and you can have good social interaction, that does not come from being on your phone. In fact, your phone will degrade your capacity to connect in person. So you got to think about your phone like processed human connection. It's like processed food.
Yeah.
It's fun. You should have a little bit here and there because it tastes good and it's fun to watch. But like, I know for a fact that it does not help me stay productive. It does not help me have healthy relationships. It does not bring me joy. It's temporary dopamine for, you're basically like selling your attention to the
Mhm.
social platforms.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I use a lot of social media to market my businesses. It's kind of an undeniable thing you have to do these days in order to get your word out. Like you guys found out about me, I'm sure through social media.
Yes.
But it's always kind of like, you have to figure out how to get it to serve you and not, you don't want to be you don't want it to be your master. You want it to be your
Mhm.
servant, just like your ego, right? Like
Yes.
you want your ego to be your master. You want it to be your servant. Like we've created and constructed our personas online as representations of who we are in the world, but it's never a true representation of who we are in the real world, right? That can only come from human interaction. So to me, it's like, it's really making sure that you are tracking how much you're using and making sure that you are, really prioritizing social interaction over social media interaction and recognizing it as like, is this edifying me or is this causing problems? So at least once a year, you should be editing your feed and
Mhm.
unfollow the things that you don't want to see more of and follow things you want to see more of and start to edit your feed so that you can create a more like you can actually use your feed to like feed you good content, like motivational content. I like philosophers content. I like cool quotes. I like artistic visuals, but somehow garbage gets put in there.
Yes.
We have to edit it out. Like I actually found somebody was spamming my account with like pornographic pictures and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so annoying,"
Mhm.
So you got to like really make sure to be careful how much you spend on your phone and really go out of your way to build your social network in person. Like
Yes.
those relationships with other, like let's say your family friends, or your family friends' kids, those can really catapult your career as an adult and create connections you may have never had.
Yeah, because now so many people are just so scared to talk to anyone that they just kind of hide behind their phone, you know?
They do. But that thing is they're miserable. They're not
Exactly.
happy. They're disconnected. And loneliness is like, it's you can have perceived loneliness and
Mhm.
you can have objective loneliness. So subjective versus objective loneliness or subjective or objective social isolation. It's a way of thinking about, am I lonely with people? Because that can happen. Or am I lonely because I have no people around? There's a lot of people that are lonely because they just have nobody around. And it's like their health is degrading as though they're smoking or drinking or obese. And so you cannot be socially isolated anymore, even though we ran a massive social experiment as a society. And unfortunately, we're now seeing the downstream consequences. We're seeing increased rates of addiction, increased rates of depression, increased rates of anxiety. It's all fixable, but it just requires you to talk to people face to face. And
And
it's
for some people, that is the
Yeah.
hardest part.
yeah. Look, I used to really hate public speaking,
Mhm.
and it was really scary. I really believe that the people that are going to succeed in this world are people that face their fears. So
Yes.
if you're a young person out there and you're anxious, for example, one of my siblings was using a lot of cannabis. And at the very beginning of the year, she was having a bit of a panic attack because I was taking too much cannabis. I said, you might want to give it up. And she gave it up and she had withdrawal for like 3 weeks. It really sucked. She was at her lowest of lows. eventually the cloud lifted and she's like finally on the upswing and she's like happier than she's been in a long time. But she had to face the darkness in order to transform. So like have you guys heard of The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell?
I might have heard of it, but not too much.
Okay. So
So what is it?
there's this thing called the monomyth. And basically Joseph Campbell studied mythology. And he found there was like certain stories that just kept on repeating through human existence. So, funnily enough, like what is it? The guy who created Star Wars. What is his name? You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, the author of Star Wars, basically, he got a hold of, he basically learned about Joseph Campbell and basically was like, oh, there's this like monomyth story of like human, challenges and overcoming challenges and like basically you cross this threshold. Basically you meet there's like the call to adventure, the meeting of the mentor, the crossing of the chasm, and then this new underworld you enter. And then like there's the darkest test, allies, enemies, the innermost cave. And then there's like, and then once you make it past the innermost cave, you're coming through this upswing of basically like, you're like, you find the elixir of immortality and then you return back to your home and you bring back the knowledge to your love. So it's a pretty common story you see in like a lot of movies, a lot of superhero movies. It's like the same story over and over again.
Exactly.
But fundamentally, we as a society try to avoid darkness and challenges. People are like, oh my God, life is scary, must stay safe. But actually it's facing your challenges and going through that hero's journey that you get to come out the other side smarter, stronger, fitter, faster. And like, if you don't go through these hero's journeys, you get stuck and you don't want to be stuck as a human. So like, for some people, the scariest thing in the world is like going out into the world and talking to people.
Yes.
But the thing is that once you discover that people are safe and that you can meet good, solid human beings, you can come back and you can spread that to your next community and things like that. So it's kind of the general gist in the story is like, you got to overcome your fears by going into them, not by running away from them.
Yes.
This is amazing. You are a pediatrician, so the perfect person to tell us what us kids need to do to recharge and optimize our
Mitochondria.
mitochondria and for optimal energy.
Okay. So I was a pediatrician before I started working in tech. Technically didn't finish pediatrics, but I did get my medical license. So I am a licensed doctor. But adults and kids have a lot in common. They both need to run around. They both need to move their bodies. One of the biggest challenges as people become older is they stop moving their bodies. And when kids are running around like crazy, they're literally creating more mitochondria. And that's literally creating growth in the body. Your body literally needs energy to grow. So the best thing you can do is exercise. One of the best things in the world you can do. Like one of my investors of my company, like tripled his testosterone by just exercising more and changing his diet. So like eating, don't get me wrong, I will occasionally eat sugar and garbage. I'm going to have an occasional junk food, but 90% of what I eat, 95% of what I eat is healthy. And so
controlled,
yeah, like you gotta have fun. And I actually got to the point where I was like a little bit too strict with my diet when I was younger. But I've learned that like, I'm the kind of person whose health really needs to be, I need to be careful with what I eat because I'm more sensitive than the average person to developing, problems with my health because I have some autoimmune issues. But I've been able to master them through diet, through exercise. And the thing is that like, this stuff is not new. Everyone knows you need to eat right and exercise more, right? But you got to eat the rainbow. You got to eat diversity of fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
Fruits and vegetable diversity is like so fundamental to good gut health that most kids are eating 60% of their diet is processed foods. McDonald's, Doritos, Cheetos, packaged pastries, all of that food is poisoning their metabolism. It's making them sick. It's giving them diabetes early. We have record rates of cancer in young people. And these foods are filled with chemicals, preservatives, glyphosate, all sorts of things that you do not want in your body. So the number one thing I will tell a person is eat whole foods. Eat foods that are ingredients. do not eat processed foods if you can avoid them.
Yeah.
Processed foods like chicken nuggets in the freezer section, fries, those are not health foods. They are going to make you sick. You will get disease early. You will end up with chronic illness. You cannot eat these foods if you want to be healthy. You cannot be sedentary if you want to be healthy. You have to move your body. Like the last 2 days, it's been really cold in Austin and I have not worked out enough and I definitely did not feel awesome. So I noticed very quickly when I changed my lifestyle habits, it's really obvious. Like I'm like a little canary in the coal mine. So like I have to be so careful with my lifestyle. But that's part of the reason why, I feel most of the time more energized. I'm almost 40 in January 27th. And I feel younger than I did in my 20s, which is pretty cool. So you can actually get younger as you get older. You can feel and look younger as you get older, but you have to take care of your metabolism. So you have to have the right fuel in the gas tank. You have to make sure you don't eat 24/7, 7 days a week. You have to spend some time not eating. Occasionally, just skip breakfast once in a while, not every day. But kids really do need to eat a lot because like you're growing. But as you become an adult and you're in like your 30s, for example, your metabolism is starting to change, 40s, 50s, that's when you start to eat less. But you definitely need to eat a lot when you're a kid. So I'm not saying kids should be fasting. For holidays like Ramadan and like things like that, a different story.
But intermittent fasting, they should keep to just eating food.
Yeah, I think most kids should not be intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
I do think that it's safe for kids to do fasting for like Ramadan and for holidays that are religious holidays. Everybody can survive like not eating an occasion, but I wouldn't recommend like the kind of fasting I would recommend in a 40-something person.
Yeah.
And then, the other one is nutrient density. So you got to take your vitamin D. You got to make sure you take magnesium. It's really, really hard to get all of the micronutrients. So I do recommend a multivitamin for kids. I think every it's really hard to get all the micronutrients in your diet. So it's not a bad idea to supplement a little bit, but I wouldn't recommend doing like a massive supplement regimen like an adult,
Yeah.
I would be very careful with sugar intake. Liquid sugars, sodas are a big no. Do not eat soda. Do not drink soda. It's just poison. Like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Why would you drink poison?
Just poison in a can.
It's just garbage. It's like literally pouring water in in a car's gas tank, like it's a bad analogy, but like you would never throw like soda is just does not belong in the engine of the car. And then the other thing I will say is you need to play. Too many kids are so focused on success at a young age that they're not playing. Like you should be do not
playing physically, not just all on the
like go play outside, throw a ball around, like climb a tree, get your hands dirty in the dirt.
Yeah.
Go and do things outside. Like I grew up outside and me and my sisters are really healthy adults, but we played outside. We got into the sandbox. We ran around. We had a little go-kart. We drove around the neighborhood. Like we had a lot of independence. There's a lot of fear that kids should not be able to go outside. But if you're in a little group of kids, you're pretty safe. Like you're safe together. I wouldn't necessarily recommend like running around by yourself as a child, but I do think that we do not let kids have enough opportunity to play outside and like explore. And like exploring the world is like a really amazing thing to do as a child. And like you need to connect to nature. You need to be in nature. If you want to get off your phone and your computer, you need to get out into nature and see green space and be in a park and like play volleyball and like do team sports. Like do not underestimate the power of play. Like it's so good for your nervous system. And it's really, really healthy for families to also play together and not to forget the power of just like being present with one another without your phones on,
Yeah.
like adults need to model that for kids too. And that means like families are together having meals, turn your phones off, no phones at the dinner table.
Yes.
Eating meals together in the evenings is powerful medicine. You share information and resources with your siblings and your families and your friends when you share meals. So don't skip dinners, like don't skip like family meal time was really important as a child for our family. And if let's say your parents work a lot, learn to cook. I learned how to cook when I was a child. If I can learn how to bake a like Italian, sponge cake with buttercream frosting in 5th grade, anybody can learn how to cook or bake.
You just try.
No, you just try.
I wouldn't recommend eating cake anymore. Like I don't eat cake like that anymore. But I mean, I was like exploring in the kitchen, so like learning how to cook and feed yourself is a really important skill as an adult that you need to have. And a lot of kids never learn that. And so because of that, they just get takeout or processed foods. And that's why they're getting sick.
Well, this was so amazing.
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 So thank you so much for these easy tips. Everyone, please make sure to follow Dr. Molly on social media. We are so thankful for your wisdom and time today.
Let's recap Dr. Molly's key points.
The mitochondria is so much more than being the powerhouse of the cell. It is the sensing of integrating the environment.
I mean, it does so much more than anyone ever thinks about it.
Yeah, like no one ever thinks about the mitochondria. It's kind of like
it really fuels your body.
It's like very underrated. So the mitochondria is very sensitive to our environment. So us kids can start to hack our mitochondria, biohack it, and then start to increase our energy and our health.
I mean, us kids, everyone needs human connection, right?
Everyone.
It's just so important.
Kid, adult, teenager, anyone. Baby, I mean, I don't know.
Infant.
Yeah, for sure.
Love heals you. We need love to survive. The best thing you can do for your mitochondria is exercising and changing your diet.
Also, nature.
Nature. Yes, nature is very important. Go outside, ground. You also need to you need to eat the rainbow. Fruit and vegetables are diversity is the key for our overall health. So eat whole foods today. Be careful with sugar intake. Don't drink soda. It's just garbage, poison. Why would you want to drink poison? If it said poison, would you drink it?
And family meal time is also so important. Learn to cook as well. It can really help.
You need to play. Go and do things outside. Connect with nature. Never underestimate the power of play.
And remember to be present with one another.
Yes.
You can actually get younger as you get older. Just take care of your metabolism. Start with these simple tips today.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zansari.
I'm Abdullah.
And I'm Imad.
Follow my family and I on social media, Holistic Mom D, and look out for my mom's book. She is working on her 8th, and I'm doing the illustrations, and we're also writing a book. So there's a lot of stuff happening right now. So kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast and iTunes and leave reviews so other kids and families can benefit. We need to work together to create a healthy future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kid Show, where kids are empowering kids.
Thank you, everyone.